Alright, now on to the second part of chapter 1. So here we're seeing how the body is divided into these different parts. What I want you to know is the difference between the axial and the appendicular. So axial just means your head, neck, and trunk, and then appendicular just means your arms and your legs. Okay, so then they also divided the axial portion into different smaller parts. So we're going to see that the cranial cavity means the brain. Vertebral canal or the vertebral cavity or the spinal cavity, that's for the spinal cord. So you can use either one, vertebral or spinal, on the test. Thoracic cavity is your chest. So here you have your lungs, your heart, and the other parts in your chest region. And the abdominopelvic region is your gut. Now I'm going to add just a few more here, and we're going to discuss these in lab. If you see the word mediastinum, mediastinum refers to the region between the lungs. So, what organ do we have between our lungs? We have the heart. So the heart is located in the mediastinum. But also the mediastinum has our aorta, our esophagus, our trachea. Now, if I said be specific, if it's only the heart, then you would say pericardium. Pericardium, heart only. And here's another one. If I said plural, know that this refers to the lungs only. And so there are two pleural cavities for each lung. Okay, so in this picture we're seeing here, the cranial cavity is the brain. Vertebral canal, vertebral cavity, or the spinal cavity is for the spinal cord. Thoracic cavity is the chest. The diaphragm, also know this word. The diaphragm is the region, but it's actually a muscle that separates the thoracic from the abdominopelvic region. Oops. Okay, then here the abdominopelvic cavity, so that's your gut. The upper part of it, that contains your liver, your stomach, intestines. That's the abdominal cavity. The lowest part, the pelvic cavity, that's for the bladder, reproductive organs. Okay, so then the picture on the right we're seeing here, what they did is they outlined it here. This whole part is the mediastinum, this whole middle part. Okay, but if I said, how about only the heart? If it's only the heart, then you would say pericardial cavity. Okay, the lungs only are the pleural cavities. There's the right and left pleural cavities. The diaphragm, once again, is the one that separates the thoracic from the abdominopelvic. Abdominal cavity, containing your stomach, your liver, your intestines, and the pelvic cavity for the bottommost organs. And so what I just talked about before, the diaphragm is the muscle that separates the two cavities, mediastinum, region between the lungs. So the mediastinum contains the heart, but also the esophagus, trachea, these other organs, abdominal pelvic cavity. And so what I was saying before, your main organs in the pelvic cavity is the bottommost organs. Okay, the next, serous membrane is this double-layered membrane that surrounds some of these organs. And it is a double layer, and there is this lubricating fluid in between the two layers. Serous membranes with the two layers, we need to know the names of the two layers. Visceral, if it's the inner layer, so the visceral is the one that is stuck right on top of the organ. Then the parietal layer is the one around the visceral layer. Okay, so both of these are around the organ, but visceral is right stuck on the organ, parietal layer is on top. Okay, so now the examples of serous membranes. If we're talking about the lungs, so the lungs have this membrane. If it is the membrane that is stuck right on the lung, you would say visceral pleura. But if it's the membrane that is around the visceral one, the outer layer, then you would say the parietal pleura. Okay, if it's for the heart, the inner layer membrane is the visceral pericardium, the outer layer is the parietal pericardium. And For the abdominal pelvic organs, which are also surrounded by this membrane, visceral peritoneum would be the inner layer, parietal peritoneum the outer layer. Okay, so we'll discuss these in lab so that you'll understand them better. Then next, our book talks about the organ systems, which are pretty self-explanatory, but some things I just want to add. Integumentary system. Know that the integumentary system includes the skin, hair, and nails. Skeletal system, we all know, it's just the bones. Muscular system are muscles, allowing us to move. Nervous and endocrine systems, these are involved in homeostasis. Nervous system, your brain, spinal cord, nerves. And then the endocrine system, these are the glands that produce hormones. Glands, so it's supposed to be an S, that make hormones. Cardiovascular system, this includes your heart, blood vessels, lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is basically our immune system. And our lymphatic system includes lymphatic vessels, which are these green lines that you're seeing here. And then the little spots here, those are the lymph nodes. And also our spleen, thymus gland, those are all considered to be lymphatic system. But so what I really want you to know, lymphatic system is your immune system. It contains the white blood cells that will attack the viruses, bacteria, parasites. Digestive system, you already know, your stomach, liver, intestines. Respiratory system, your lungs. Urinary system, your kidneys, your bladder. And the urinary system's job is to get rid of the waste material from our blood. On the reproductive system, we're seeing here for male and female. Okay, next thing, anatomical position. Whenever we describe anything in anatomy, it has to be in this anatomical position. So standing erect, facing forward, upper limbs at sides. But what I really want you to remember is the palms are facing forward in the anatomical position. Okay, so we're going to come back to this, and you're going to see why this is important. Okay, so now next, directional terms. You will hear and use these terms throughout the semester and the next semester in AMP2 as well. So here, superior or cranial, meaning the same thing. These both refer to the top part of the body, going up. And then inferior caudal refers to the bottom part of the body. So here's some sample questions, how these might be asked. And these could be like multiple choice questions. So if I said the eyes are more what than the neck, choose either superior cranial or inferior caudal. Because the eyes are more above than the neck, we're going to say the eyes are more superior, or you can say cranial. Then the abdomen, because it's lower than the mouth, it's more inferior or caudal. Next thing, ventral or anterior. This means towards the front of the body. And dorsal posterior means towards the back of the body. So our sternum, our breastbone, because it's in the front, we're going to say that it is more anterior or ventral than the spine. And then the teeth, think of it because the teeth are behind the lips, the teeth are more posterior dorsal. That's not a great example, but the idea. Medial means towards the middle of our body, towards the midline. And lateral means away from the midline, so to the sides. Don't worry about intermediate, this refers to kind of in between. So here is where that anatomical position comes into play here. Our thumb is more what than our pinky finger. Because the palm is facing forward, our thumb is actually more on the outside, more to the side. And our pinky finger is closer to our body. So we would say the thumb is more lateral. The nose, because it's in the middle, The ears are on the sides, the nose is more medial. You could also say the heart is more medial than our lungs. Proximal versus distal, these are used for our arms and our legs. Proximal means if it is closer to your body, so closer to the attachment, and distal means away from the attachment. Okay, but again, remember, only for the arms and legs are when these are used. And if both structures are in the arms and legs. So if you look at these examples here, the shoulder is more wet than the wrist. Because the shoulder is closer to your body, it's more proximal. And the knee is more farther away than your hip, so the knee is more distal. Superficial versus deep. Superficial means towards the surface of our body, so towards the outside, and deep means towards the inside of our body. So our skin, because it's more on the outside, the skin is more superficial. And our bones, because think if bones are covered by muscles, bones are more inside, our bones are deeper than our organs or our muscles. Okay, then the body sections. So what this shows is how the body can be cut into these parts so that we can see the inside of the organs, the inside of the body. So what this is showing is, let's start with this one. Median or mid-sagittal. This one cuts the body in half into left and right parts. Parasagittal means if it's not cut right down the middle. Oops. So it does not produce equal left and right parts. Transverse or horizontal plane. This one is cutting across. This is also known as a cross section or the horizontal plane. And then here, frontal or coronal plane. This one cuts into front and back parts. So on the next slide, this is all explained. So let's look at this again. Sagittal section, left and right portions. You can also say parasagittal. And so sagittal and parasagittal, meaning that it's not really cut right down the middle. It's not being specific. But if it is cut right down the middle, mid-sagittal or median section, divides the body into equal left and right halves. Transverse or horizontal section, so this one's cutting the body across into top and bottom parts. Coronal or frontal section, this one is cutting the body into front and back parts. So here is an example. Sagittal section, but looks like this is actually cut right down the middle, so we should actually call this mid-sagittal or median. This one cut the brain across, so this would be the transverse section. And this one's cutting the brain into front and back parts, so that's the frontal or the coronal section. So yeah, we'll go through all of these in lab and I'll give you examples. Body regions and quadrants. I want you guys to study these pictures. You will hear these terms throughout the semester. So this is more to describe where the injury is, for example, in the abdominal pelvic region. Okay, and lastly, now this specifically will not be on the exam, but you will hear these terms, see these terms throughout the semester. So I would like you to study this picture and become familiar with these different terms for our body parts.